Welcome. My name is Barbara Hassel, and I am with the Florida Presbyterian Disaster Assistance Network, FLAPDAN for short. I have been working with the Everglades City, Chokoloskee, Plantation, Copeland, Cities of the Everglades Long-Term Recovery Group for about 2 years now. We had wanted to do this presentation live, but as we were scheduling it, we wound up being sidetracked by the pandemic. So we're going to try doing it here as a recording, and hopefully you'll be able to stick with us. Won't be as interactive as we'd like, but we will go ahead and try it. So you say, who is Presbyterian Disaster Assistance Network? Well, we are part of PCUSA, Presbyterian Church USA, the national church, and we are focused on long-term recovery for the disaster impacted, both here in the United States and internationally. We provide training and disaster preparedness at all levels, from the very local church level up through our presbyteries and synods and out to our member partners. We provide national response teams that help us assess needs and coordinate volunteers through the call center. Now, Florida Presbyterian Disaster is the local conduit to PDA, and we support the long-term recovery efforts. And of course, we do the training. That's where I come in. Now, at this point in time in this presentation, we were planning on being able to interact with you. And I still want you to think about it, these couple questions as to what community do you represent? Are you a business owner? Are you part of the houses of worship that might want to know a little bit more information? Or are you viewing this because you as an individual want to be sure that you and your family are protected and prepared for whatever might come your way? And then I also want you to think about, what was your Irma experience? True, almost all of us went through the same storm, had many of the same type of outcomes, but we all see things from a little bit different perspective depending on who we are. Are we a head of a household? Do we have a family to take care of? Were we able to evacuate? Did we come back to damages? What are our experiences? Shared experiences give us an insight into each other and make a stronger community. Hopefully at some point we'll be able to get together and really have those discussions. But for right now, we're just going to talk about what's happened in the past and where we are moving forward. Well, let me tell you what I know about you. You're a very interesting and self-reliant set of communities. Everglades City has an estimated population as of the last census of about 424. Not exactly the metropolis that I come from over on the other coast. Chokoloskee has an estimated population of 359 with an elevation above sea level of only 10 feet. Plantation Island has a population of 163 with an even lower elevation at 4 feet. And then you get Copeland, whose estimated population was only about 20, and an elevation of 3 feet. So there's some things that you need to consider. You've got some unique issues to deal with, and definitely some independence. But no matter whether you come from metropolis, I'm from Fort Lauderdale, or you come from a small community that's very tight-knit, disaster preparedness all has the same elements of a plan. Now, when we say disaster, what does that mean? Yeah, it might mean a whole lot more than dropping that last gallon of milk on the floor and at midnight and no way to get to the store. That's a disaster personally, but it may not be what we consider a disaster. So a disaster can be an act of God. The ones that we're familiar with, hurricanes, see them all the time, and unfortunately we have a greater than average, above average season predicted again for this year. Here in the Everglades communities, flooding, definitely a problem and a possibility. Fires can be either to an individual building or residence, or we could have a wildfire that comes across the Everglades, between the smoke and the embers and massive destruction. We're seeing tornadoes, and we're seeing more of them than we have in the past. And then finally, we are now being hit with a pandemic that is going to be with us for some time. Some pockets of the communities are not going to be hit at all. Others are going to see the ramifications of this illness for years. But a disaster can also be an act of humanity, or should we say inhumanity. You've seen the reports, you've seen the increase in the active shooters. We have kindergartners who are 5 years old and are being taught to prepare for an active shooter in their school. Instead of learning to play with blocks and learn to write their name, they're learning to hide in closets and to be quiet. Burglary can also be a disaster. If you're a business owner, or if you're a residential person, someone breaking into your establishment or your home is a disaster for you, emotionally and financially. Then, of course, there is my favorite, technology. This has struck me on more than one occasion. You go to do a presentation and all of a sudden your flash drive won't open up the program, your computer won't work, or the computer won't talk to the projector. Technology is out to get us sometimes, and they are all disasters. They may have different ways of being approached and different things that you need to do within your plan, but they all have the same 4 elements of the plan. You've got 4 elements: prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. No matter what the disaster, all of these need to be taken into consideration when you're planning. Prevention. You need to know what your disaster potential is for your area, whether it be the larger community area or even within your building, within your home. You need to take an inventory of what you've got already and what needs to be replaced, what can be salvaged, what could be a potential hazard. Survey your current situation. In my training years ago, we were taught not to necessarily look straight ahead when you're walking, but look down, check the baseboards, look to see if there's something that would be a trip hazard, something that could increase your liability. Know what your disaster potential is. Look up. Do you have ceiling tiles that are loose? Maybe you will see a water stain that might indicate that you have a problem with your plumbing and that you need to have something looked at. So be aware of your current situation. Walk around, take a look at what you've got, be thinking about where could you utilize your building, your home to create relief from a disaster. And then preparedness. You need to create a plan based on possible scenarios. After you have figured out what you have and what could be a problem and what could be of use to you, do the what if thinking. Be creative. Let it be over the top and somewhat wild. Think about the worst case. As they've been telling us, we're going to plan for the worst and hope for the best. I remember years ago, I was part of a disaster drill in Los Angeles after the Northridge earthquake. And we came up with some of the most outrageous scenarios. We finally called it off after the second day when we started running out of ideas and the tigers had escaped from the zoo. We thought that that was enough. But think about it, hope that it never happens, but what if? What if you are unable to evacuate? What if the storm surge is higher than that 3 to 4 to even 10 feet that you have? What if you're looking at a 20-foot storm surge that's coming in 15 miles? How would you handle that? And what would it mean to you? And once you have looked at all of those possible scenarios, and remember, we want to talk about a different plan, but the same, but being prepared for each of the different types of disasters. Your plan for a hurricane and a flooding might be a great deal different than for having a wildfire come across the glades. You want to know what your response is going to be. You're going to write it up in as much detail as you can as to what you expect to have happen. I was a director for a preschool at my church many years ago, and we did have to write response plans, disaster plans, and we had to look at each of these different types of scenarios. And we had to assign roles. You can't just say, well, I'm the director, I know where everything is. What if I don't happen to be there that day? And what if I'm out of town at a seminar? We want to assign roles, you want to assign backups, you want to rehearse your plan. Just because it sounds good on paper, you want to go through it. You don't just put on a play or a musical and say, okay, here's the book, we've learned our lines, we haven't tried blocking it, we don't know what's going to happen with it, we're just going to go ahead and do the performance. You need to rehearse your plan because that's going to help you fill in the gaps. It's going to help you see what will possibly work and what won't. Another reason for rehearsing your plan is because you want to let your muscle memory kick in. You don't want to be running around reading your disaster manual during the disaster. It should be something that if you don't know where you put that red book, you know what to do anyway. I never worried about how my teachers would handle anything because we did fire drills constantly. So when the fire alarm went off, when the kids were napping, which is not usually when we did our drills, they knew exactly what to do, and I didn't have to worry about it. And once you have rehearsed your plan, you've got it in place, you're set with your response, then you need to look at your recovery. You need to review and critique your plan. What was right? What did you do well? Was there something you missed? Was there something that you could do better? Did you think about how you were going to get out of the house? How were you going to stay in communication with each other if all the cell phones are down? How do you know? Do you have that particular place set up where you're going to be able to check in with your family or with your business if you're not in the same place? So, after we have done our plan, then we need to consider that preparedness is everyone's job. Are you going to be ready? Were you ready for Irma? If you were ready for Irma, have you shared that information with your neighbors, your business cohorts, the people that you go to church with? We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to share with each other. So let's look a little bit about some of the questions that you might want to ask, whether it's a family or organizational question. Do you have a plan? And if I'm the one who wrote the plan, have I shared it with anybody? Not only within my business, within my church, within my family, but in my greater community. Is there someone else that knows what it is? Do you have current inventory and insurance information available? Where's it stored? If you've got it off in a safe deposit box, that is not going to help you come a disaster. You should have a safe and secure place both at your business, at your house, that has this information. You also should have it stored, copies of it stored someplace outside of the area. Maybe with a family member that lives out of state, someone that you know and trust to have it. So that if something should happen to your building, say a fire in the middle of the night, is that information available? I know we're in a time of saying we're a paperless society, and yes, we can be. Take pictures of everything that you have in your business or your home of value and your insurance information. We have one of these phones, one of these little things, and they take amazing pictures and give you a chance to store information. And usually you are not very far away from that phone. If you are a business, is there an ability to initiate a separate accounting system to receive and disperse your disaster funds? Because you may be asked at some point either by your insurance company, or if you're getting money through FEMA, something like that, they may want to know how that was used, because they don't want to be what we would call double dipping. We don't want to make sure that you're duplicating your efforts. So there may be a time for an accounting. And does your family, which is probably, I'm going to say it's probably mom, your family named someone to be in charge of the as a disaster coordinator? Does your business or your church have someone who has been trained as a disaster coordinator? Someone who can take that responsibility. And is there an evacuation plan and a communication system? If something should happen, you need to know who needs to know and who's going to make sure that happens. Now, within the family and church or the organization, you also want to be sure that your information is up to date. In a family, probably pretty easy to do. You know, if you change phone numbers, your family is going to know. But you want to let people who are out of state, out of the area, they need to know also. Within a church or a business organization, have your employees moved? Do you have accurate and up-to-date information on them? Do you have member information up to date? And do you have a communications plan to assist the elderly or the infirm, especially if you're a church or a house of worship? But even as a business, you might want to consider that. In this type of a community especially, you are a small and very familial community, and you want to take care of your customers, your clients. You want to be sure that your friends and neighbors are taken care of, and you don't want anybody to slip through the cracks. If you are within the hospitality industry, do you have information on your guests? Not that you want to be Big Brother, but you want to be able to be sure that you have emergency contact information for them as well, and a way of communicating to them that there is an issue. Are your evacuation or shelter-in-place plans well communicated? Do your friends, your neighbors, your family know what your plans are? Does the emergency management people, do your law enforcement people know what your plans are? If you are ordered to evacuate, are you going to? Are you going to do what is safe for you? Are you going to be self-reliant and shelter in place? The police and fire need to know that as well. And have you established a central communications point for check-in and information after the disaster? I recall during the Northridge earthquake, my son was a young teenager and he was over at a friend's house, a friend I had only met once, and I had dropped him off. I had no idea how to get in touch with him. There was the mom angle which said he was okay, and he was, but it was several hours before I could get out of our condo, go and look for him, and by that time when I came back, he had already gotten home as well. But you need to have a central communications point so that people can touch bases with you. Once again, your phone is a really good way of doing that. Text somebody, let them know, and preferably you might want that communications point to be out of the area. And are you looking out for your neighbors, both your business neighbors, your church neighbors, and your physical home neighbors? A couple questions you might want to consider, both for family and organizational, is how will the building be secured? If there is damage to the building, what's going to happen? Who's going to board it up? Who's going to go in and start cleaning it out? How will your family and your employees be cared for? As a business owner, you have responsibilities to your employees. And I think in this community, a lot of them are considered family. So you want to really take that into consideration. Yes, you're going to be worried about yourself, but you need to be worried also about your extended family. Do you have leaders in the community, in the houses of worship, especially that have had training or connection in disaster spiritual care? Remember, no matter what happens, it may be up to 72 hours before Red Cross, United Way, Salvation Army, before they can actually get into a disaster area. So if you have local people that can act in that stead as a first responder until the professionally trained and capable people are in, someone that can be a shoulder to cry on. I consider it disaster spiritual care as being spiritual CERT, and the CERT is your community involvement and response trainees. If there's a site, can you identify that? Can your site be used to assist others? Is there a plan if that's the case? If you're going to set up, in the park, if you've got a large parking lot, that could be a place where you could stage for feeding, for something like that. And are you connected? Or do you just kind of go about your business and don't speak to anybody? The more connected a community is, the quicker and they will recover from any type of a disaster, because they will pull together and they'll know what each other's needs are. Well, I thank you for being here. Keep these in mind. Hopefully, we never have to use them again. But think about what you need to do. If you have questions, please get in touch with the Long-Term Recovery Group, or you can reach me, and my number is 305-469-4499. As I said, we're going to try and get this as a live town hall as well. So if you've got questions, feed them in through the Long-Term Recovery Group, who sent you this link to begin with, and we'll take it from there. Thanks, and have a wonderful day.